So I'm doing a live video, as I said yesterday, of all questions when it comes to half marathon training. Lots of people that I've been coaching or that are coming up with the 12-week program for the Burge to Burge have asked me loads of questions. I thought, why don't I just do this? Obviously, a bit out of the comfort zone from what I normally do, but I figured, why not just go for it? And to be honest, there's probably stuff that I'm not going to know the answers to, and that's absolutely fine. But if it helps even one person, then obviously that is pretty good. But uh, obviously, the whole idea is people can ask any questions about anything to do with the half marathon or training or anything in general. Ideally, running related. That would be really nice. Obviously, you can ask me random stuff, and I probably will know the answer, but it's not really why I'm here, to be honest. So I'm just going to just get straight into the questions that the first people had asked, and then we can just sort of take it from there. So someone had asked, how many days a week should I run when I'm training for a half marathon? You're probably going to get this for every single answer that you get from a running coach or a strength coach or just anything like that. It's probably going to be, the answer is it depends. Obviously, normally for running, you would say the most appropriate amount of times for running for you is the amount of times that you can fit into your day and into the structure of what you're doing. So, for some person that might look like 5 times a week, and for other people that might look like 3 times a week. So, that's why it sort of always sort of depends on what your week looks like. Obviously, if you're someone like myself who trains all the time, if you're a professional coach or something, you might be able to fit in more runs if you've got more capacity. If you're a corporate lawyer, then you're obviously not going to have as much capacity if you're working till 1 a.m. That's something to consider. However, I would say for a basic structure, I would say around 3 days a week for running, which allows you to add in sort of strength and conditioning if you're a beginner. If you're more intermediate, you're probably going to be looking to 4 to 5. And then if you're more advanced, you're probably looking 5 to 6. There will be people, of course, who run 7 days a week, and that's absolutely fine as well. But you've got to remember that you've got to take time for your other things like your strength and conditioning, and you've got to add those in. Obviously, if you're somebody who gets coached by a coach, they're going to tell you all this stuff. But this is more generic for anybody who's thinking about engaging either in a 12-week plan or engaging in coaching itself. So that hopefully answers that as a basic overview. Obviously, there's always more you can be doing. And, if you reach a point where you've reached the maximum amount of mileage or sort of time that you're able to fit in capacity wise for run training, you can always substitute things in like low intensity biking. You can even include things like intense biking sessions. You can do tempo threshold sessions. You can do VO2 max type sessions on the bike. You can use the cross trainer. And a lot of the time, one of the limiting factors people find is the fact that they're probably not able to add on additional mileage without having too much stress and strain on, say, like their calves and shins, etc. So that's when obviously things like cross training are going to be super important. And then I've just seen Ruth's asked a question. Haley would like your opinion on running shoes. She's making her comeback. That's obviously great to hear. She's been in her hybrid era for the summer, so it'll be great to see her back. So running shoes, I always say for most people, will be the shoes that are the most comfortable ones for you. So, it doesn't really matter in particular what brand you use or, whatever. It's not for me to sell shoes for someone. The shoes that work for me might not work for someone else. So if you're, beginner, intermediate, you probably have a couple pairs of shoes that you do all your work in, an easy pair and a pair that you use for harder sessions and races. And then obviously, if you're someone that does a lot of mileage, I tend to try and tell people to do run shoe rotation. So that will mean that you probably have 3 to 4 different pairs of shoes that you can use for different runs. So, something soft, something comfortable that you're going to use for easy mileage throughout the week. And then maybe something with, a bit stiffer, a bit more responsive if you're going to do more interval type sessions. And then obviously you've got carbon plated ones, etc. But each to their own. I would definitely say that one shoe for one person is not going to be the right shoe for someone else. So basically, I think that's pretty much covers the shoes. probably just buy some cheap ones, I would say, especially if you keep quitting running. That's what I would say. So just buy some cheap ones, and then that means you're not going to be too sad if you spent $150 on a pair of shoes that you only use 2 times. Jimmy says, do you like running or biking more? Definitely running, but obviously having been injured for the last couple of months, it's good to be able to jump and do some different biking stuff, and obviously you can add in different training as well. So that's good fun. Question about the shoes. Obviously, I said what is easy runs and what is tempo runs. I know this is like probably basic for most people, but obviously it goes without saying that easy runs are runs that you're going to use to build running capacity, building running mileage, and then, slowly adding in time on your feet throughout the week. Now, easy should be, as it says on the tin, easy. That means, it should be around that zone 1, zone 2, or as I like to call it, conversational pace. So easy is going to feel different on every single day. One day that you're easy might feel like, not so easy, but sort of the idea of it is to make sure that you're really keeping it at that conversational pace. If you really start to push it, you're going to start going into those higher zones, and then you start getting into the territory of junk mileage. Now, tempo runs are something a bit different. So tempo runs are runs that are done at a pace that is sustainably hard. So tempo is probably in that range between anywhere between the top of zone 2 to maybe the top of zone 3, where you're running at extended periods of time at hard effort. Now, this is going to be super important, especially if you're engaging into the half marathon plan, and something that you should definitely consider, adding into your training. Now, this is going to be in or just below or around your sort of lactate threshold, and these runs are going to feel pretty hard. They're the kind of runs that are the easiest ones to quit, but the ones that have the biggest bang for your buck. So obviously going off that, the next sort of thing above that is track sessions, hard run interval sessions, or repetition sessions. Now, these, for most people, typically find these easier, especially if you've come from a strength and conditioning sports background, or maybe you're a former athlete. These track sessions and hard sessions are normally a bit easier. The tempo sessions, however, are the ones that really move the needle, and they're that sort of comfortably but uncomfortably hard sessions that are really going to build all sorts of things between like lactate clearance, lactate tolerance, and everything in between. So definitely worth adding into your training program. And if you're not doing them already, then you should definitely do those type of runs. How long should my longest run be before race day? So if you're engaging in a half marathon program, normally I would say the longest run would be around the typical time that it takes you to do your half marathon at your best pace, up to sort of around 1.5 times that volume. So if it takes you around 1.5 hours, you might be looking at somewhere between 1.5 and 2 hours for your total volume. However, what I normally say is your longest run should be not so important as your weekly cumulative time on your feet. That's always going to be more important for all things running. So if you're able to spread across your total distance across the week, then that's always going to be better, rather than sort of lumping it all in. So as a general rule, I would say your long run should not be more than 20% off your weekly mileage. But that's just a general rule. This keeps injury risk down, and it means that you can focus on doing good quality sessions throughout the week, whether that be interval sessions, repetition sessions, tempo runs, threshold runs, zone 3. So that's definitely something that you should be adding in. So long run, it's not particularly the most important thing to make sure that it's a specific time. Just try and get that distance up. So basically, we've got a question there from Kevin saying that he's done his ACL meniscus, had the op, and basically have done it again. Don't plan on having the op. He can only manage between 3 and 5Ks. Anything recommended to increase my distance? Basically running through a bit of pain. Now, obviously, first and foremost, the sort of main thing is make sure that you're cleared to run by a doctor. Make sure that you're cleared to run by your physio, as obviously I can't give medical advice and don't know everyone's particular case. what the most important thing returning back from something like an ACL injury is obviously the strength specific training around around the knees, around the quads, and around the hamstrings. So ACL is massively protected by the hamstrings. So making sure that you're doing your isometric hamstring exercises, your isometric quad exercises, and I would also make sure that when you're doing your strength and conditioning, that you're doing everything on the single leg. Now, I've done quite a few videos on these kinds of things. However, if you type into anyone's YouTube, single leg exercises for runners post ACL, you can probably get 2 to 3 different exercises you're able to do 2 to 3 times a week that will really help. Now, in terms of increasing your running distance, this is always going to be difficult. What I will say is don't do too much too soon and utilize cross training where possible. Now, the biggest risk factor for you is going to be intensity when it comes to runs. So obviously what you don't want to do is increase too much intensity at the same time you're increasing duration. So if you're increasing your duration, you want to probably avoid intensity at that time. So that means, same as I mentioned on the last question, cumulative mileage when it comes to your total distance is going to be more important than singular run distance. So obviously, if you're doing, say, three a week, you might want to then go and add four 3Ks in 1 week to increase the total distance, rather than thinking about increasing say one singular run to say 4, 5, 6K, as you'll probably find that the fatigue and the recovery back from that longer run generally takes a bit longer than if you were to split it across different runs. But obviously different folks will require different sort of different time to recovery depending on sort of how that goes. So you just want to take it day by day. What I will say is, like, doing a training log, even if you use something like AI, ChatGPT or something, can really help. If you keep a training log of what you've done, or if you even use your own personal Garmin or Strava or something, just to make sure you know what was sore, what was painful, or if there was any issues whilst you were running. So obviously this can really help, especially when you go back to reflect. Look at your weekly mileage. Now, normally I would say 10% increase weekly mileage for somebody, for if you're increasing after an increasing. That's for a non-injured person. Now, for a injured person, you might even want to limit that to 5% a week. Now, if you obviously do 5%, if you do 5% more, that's obviously not going to be a lot, especially if you're doing, say, 3, 5Ks a week. You're only going to be increasing, say, 1, 2 K a week, and that's absolutely fine. I wouldn't really focus too much on distance either. Focus on time. You're able to keep the sort of time more specific for you, and then you can increase it. Hopefully that's answered. Now, Sam says you're an Adidas athlete. I'm actually an Adidas coach, not an athlete, thank God, because if I was paid for my athletic performance, then we wouldn't have much stuff. But thankfully, I'm an Adidas coach. Do you think you'd ever win the Eildon Hill race? I don't think I would ever win the Eildon Hill race, because going uphill, I'm not very good. So the Eildon Hill race is one of the most famous hill races in the whole wide world. So if you don't know what it is, then look it up. So how do I become elite? What is your definition of elite? Obviously, does that mean elite times or paces for you, or elite in the world? Like, I think one of the main things we need to all come to grips with is the fact that for most of us, we're probably never going to make it to the Olympics, not to put anyone down, but, unless you're sort of a late bloomer or something, that you're maybe never going to make it to the Olympics. But can you make it elite in terms of maybe age group triathlon, age group running? Then, of course, you can always get to the top of where you are. But it's important to realize the journey that it takes and the sort of longevity that is required to get to the absolute top. Most of these people have been training for absolute years. If you're talking, you've got 10 to 15 years endurance training under your belt, then obviously that's, something that you need to consider, that's what these elites have done. Most of them have been training since they were 10 to 15 years old. But what I would say is stay consistent, keep your training going, and that's the best way to become your version of elite, which is the most important thing to me. Abdullah says, swimming's making me think twice of being a triathlete. That's why I'm a duathlon specialist. And let's just leave swimming. It's good fun, and it's good break for sort of mental health and all the other good positive things to come. But I wouldn't stress too much about getting too much faster at swimming. I would just say get in there and try and enjoy it for what it is. a nice peaceful 30, 40 minutes of the day where you get to switch off from your phone, you get to switch off from everything that's happening outside of life. Exactly. There we go. My version of elite is the best. So your elite is obviously more important than being the elite person in the world. Become the best runner and athlete that you can be, and that's obviously the most important thing to you, to me as a coach, and everything in between. And it's something that I always try and tell everyone. So what's the best way to balance running and strength training? So the best way to balance running and strength training is obviously look at what you've got during the week. Actually physically get a pen and paper and write down what capacity and extra capacity you have throughout the week, and then write in the slots of what your ideal looks like, and then how you are best going to balance it. It's no point asking me that question because I'm probably a lot more flexible. I work from home most of the days, so I'm able to work in running and strength training most days, and that's absolutely fine because I have capacity. But if you're trying to find out your balance, then obviously that's something to think about for yourself. Write it down on a piece of paper. Have a look what that capacity looks like for you, and then you can sort of take it from there. And then it goes into what I said before about try and split it evenly across the week. So yeah, that's basically it. So Ganem says a question on how to fuel before a marathon. So that's a great question. So obviously one of the most important things when it comes to the marathon, half marathon, obviously this being specific, half marathon. So half marathon, your carbohydrates are going to be your most important source of fuel. So I'll tell you what is ideal, what I do, and then obviously what I tell everyone else. So basically, you're going to want to make sure that you go between 6 grams and 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight for 2 days leading up to the race. Now, obviously that's a lot, but it's something that we can train. We can train our gut to tolerate, and that means that our glycogen stores will be topped up when it comes to the day of the race. Okay, so obviously try and do little and often, like with everything I say, and everything in moderation. So that means if you're going to do I'm trying to think, like 60 kilogram person, you're going to try and do minimum 6 grams, so say 360 grams of carbs throughout the day. That means you're going to try and split that up into probably 3 meals with 2 snacks, and then you can add in the extra carbohydrates throughout the day with easy things to consume, like fruits, Gatorades, and if you really push for it, fruit juices, things like that, and that'll really be able to help top up all your glycogen stores. That means on race day, things might go wrong. However, like for example, your fueling day, it means when you get to the actual race day yourself, it means that the glycogen stores are topped up, your liver glycogen's topped up, your muscle glycogen's topped up, and it means that you can, utilize that during the race. For most of us are doing a half marathon between, say, an hour 20 and typically between, say, 2 hours 30. So you've probably got between 70, 90 minutes of glycogen stores available. Obviously, you have fat stores that your body will utilize, and hopefully you're running at paces that you're able to utilize that. And that is something that will be important for your training, being trained for that. So you are going to use mostly sugars as fuel. So I would say aim for that as a rough guide. However, if you do want more specific advice, then please don't be afraid to reach out, and hopefully I can help you. Try and keep the fuel simple. And what I do personally is I reduce protein and fats consumption whilst I'm doing it. So that means I'll try and stick to a mainly vegetarian diet, try and stick to sort of nice, healthy foods and foods that I enjoy. And yes, obviously I'm going to probably indulge in some things like pizza and pasta. That's absolutely fine. I try to keep my fats lower, and I try to keep my proteins lower. And I find that it really helps my digestion if I reduce my meat consumption, especially in the 2 weeks and more specifically 2 days leading up. So hopefully that helps. So again, someone asks, what builds faster pace intervals in the gym? So everything plays its part into a running program. I probably put more emphasis on the gym being for longevity and also being for sort of injury prevention. And that's, what I sort of try and preach. I think everybody should be doing a strength and conditioning program at least 1 day a week, ideally probably 3. and a nice sweet spot might be 2. But I know that most of the people watching and listening to this are in Dubai, which means you're probably getting shafted from dawn till dusk at your work. So you probably try and fit in 3 strength sessions, 5 running sessions. You maybe do some cycling. You probably like to go on a boat on the weekend, and you probably like to do other stuff. So try and fit all that into your plan. It goes back to what I try and say before, where write everything down with your capacity of what you're able to do, and then obviously work it in to see what you're realistically able to do. There's no point saying you're going to do 3 strength training sessions a week if you've got absolutely no chance to be able to do that. So just try and be a bit more realistic. Try and focus and do things that are really simple. So things like maybe do it at home, a strength, bands, resistance, use home gyms, use, the stuff you've got in the house. Like, it's going to be absolutely fine. There's no point driving about 50 minutes to some gym in Al Quoz, or drive 50 minutes to a fancy gym in Science Park or something where you're going, right, I'm going to go and do this fancy strength workout, when you can just go to your building gym, go and do something super simple, isometric exercises. You can do explosive plyometrics for speed. And then obviously if you've got your interval run session, that is going to be key building blocks to an important running program. So hopefully that answers that question. It all plays a part. Then nothing is really more important. Obviously, people get faster. Most of the races from pretty much 1,500 meters up are aerobic races. So you'll be able to improve speed, for the most part, by just running more, working on aerobic capacity. Don't underestimate the amount of time that it takes to do aerobic benefits, which actually goes into the next question, which is how long does it take to see improvements? It takes a long time for aerobic adaptations to happen. Although when you first start, you probably felt really great because you might have been running a 35-minute 5K, and then all of a sudden you might have been running a 25-minute 5K. You've seen all these improvements. But when you start getting to the sharper end of the stick, your improvement's going to go down. So how long does it take to see the improvements in running and fitness? So improvements can take place anywhere between months and years. So the longer you're at the game, the longer and more improvement you're going to see. So what I will say is, don't expect to see 10 years of improvement in 5 minutes. You might see some miracle stories of people, going super quick. They might be, they're not the same person as you. Take your own journey. Don't focus too much on improvements. Focus on consistency, and you will get better. So that's basically all I'm going to say. And what is your definition of improvements? Is your improvements for running, faster paces, longer paces? What are you trying to train for? Are you training for mental health? Are you training for physical health? There's all sorts of spectrum and so many different questions to ask. So tips for someone looking to get into running. So this is something I get asked a lot. Utilize cross training. Start small. Focus on run walks. Now, I probably documented it a million different times in a million different videos, and loads of different videos I've done in here. When I did my first ever run back to fitness, probably about 6 years ago, I managed to run about 400 meters. I had some expectation that I'd be able to do 10Ks, half marathons, but I was completely delusional. So if you're getting into running, you have to understand that you're starting from a completely basic point of view. You're starting from literally zero, and the best thing you can do is give yourself some grace when you start and take it nice and easy. So something like walk run intervals can be a really nice way to get started, and that might be something like focus on running for 1 minute and walking for 2 minutes, and then increasing that to 2 minutes, 2 minutes running with 1 minute walking, 3 minutes running with 1 minute walking, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Once you get up to around the 10 minutes continuous running, then you can start looking to add continuous runs in more regularly. And that's something that is just sort of easy to utilize and absolutely fine. So walk runs are perfectly acceptable method to be able to start running. And those days between your runs, I would try and split your days. So for example, if you're a complete beginner, I probably wouldn't be wanting to run more than 3 times a week. However, what you can do is work on your aerobic engine around and strength and endurance around that. So if you're going to do 3 walk runs for the first, say, 4 to 6 weeks, I would say on the other days, you're quite all right to do easy biking, easy cross trainer, and swimming. Add those in gradually, and you'll really find that helps. Helps. Listen to your body. You'll know when it's time to recover. Listen to it. If you don't listen to it, ignore, push through the pain, then you'll end up getting injured. That's everyone's number one biggest fear factor is obviously getting injured. So think about that. So that's really important. So how do I improve my endurance without burning out? So improving your endurance without burning out is just going to be a longevity thing. So the longer you run for, the longer your endurance, the better it will get, up until a point. Obviously, focus on structured training, focus on adding weekly mileage in small incremental parts. So that will be around 10% a week for most people. Maybe keep it to 5% if you're injury prone, as I said before. And then another thing you want to do is make sure that you're focusing on fueling. So say you've got around, 40, any runs over 40 minutes, you're going to make sure that you're doing those runs fueled. Now, that means fuel before, that means fuel during, and that means fuel after. So before your runs, you're going to want to make sure, this is each person dependent, I'm giving you a rough ballpark, between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrates before every single run you do. I know a lot of people talk about fat max training and fat adaptation. However, basically, if you're a normal runner and you're not at the tip of the spear, you're probably not going to be thinking too much about this kind of thing. And you're probably just sweating the small stuff. Make sure you fuel every run so that it means when you go out on the day of your run, you feel fueled and you feel ready to go. That's the most important thing. Fuel during, for any runs over 40 minutes, you probably want to start introducing carbohydrates. Now, each person is going to be different. I would say in a race day scenario, you're going to be adding around 1 gram of carbs per kilogram of body weight per hour. However, in a training situation, you might be looking somewhere between 0.5 and 0.75 times your body weight for training. Okay, so what that'll look like for, say, someone like me, who is around 80 kilos, you're going to be doing around 80 grams of carbs in a race day scenario. I might be doing between 40 and 60 grams of carbs in a training scenario. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking that's too much. You're absolutely crazy. When I didn't do this, I found myself getting burnt out regularly. Injury was more prevalent. And obviously, it meant that on some of the training runs, I completely bonked and suffered. So why would you bother going through that? You might as well just take in fueling for the training and fuel for all the sessions that you're going to do. So that's what I will say. And then obviously after, you want to make sure you're recovering with carbs and protein. So something simple like a, protein shake, a banana, and then, maybe some sort of oat and protein bar, rice and protein bar. That's really going to be sufficient fuel. So that will help fuel your performance. So it's definitely important. So how important is body weight to running? So my concern with eating all the carbs, just as I just described, is will this increase my body weight? So that is a potential concern and something I was speaking with young Ben last night about. So there is actually a really interesting graph, if you look on the internet, about body weight versus running time. So, normally they say the half marathon at peak performance the time will be around the weight you are in kilograms. This is for males, actually. It's less true in females, but obviously all studies are pretty much done on males, but we're not going to get into that right now. But basically, your weight does matter, obviously, for running. However, if you have a sustainable approach to your fueling and to your food, it won't matter. So if you're fueling for that performance, for example, if you're going to do a run, it just means that you can work around the rest of your macronutrients around that run and reduce it at other times. It means that you're going to be able to do the run fueled and feel better for the run itself, rather than sort of maybe having excess carbohydrates at a time that you're not going to utilize it. And obviously, most of the things is a sort of energy equation. So you can work out exactly your calorie expenditure versus how much you're using, and then you can sort of versus against there. And basically, despite what people might have told you, carbs probably aren't going to make you fat. They're important fuel for not just running but for life. So make sure that you have them. And to be honest, I don't know if you've ever seen a professional marathon runner, a professional cyclist. They're not fat, are they? So it's quite important to take them in. I would probably say you want to reduce your processed food intake, and you want to reduce your your fats and takeaways and stuff like that. You've probably got a million different things. I'm sure having a couple of extra bananas, some rice cakes isn't going to make too much different on your weight. So it's important. Plyometrics versus heavy weights are a mix for strength training for runners. So I would say that probably most runners require heavier strength training, and it's something that is just like lacking for most people. I would say, as a generalization, that's probably what you need to add. However, plyometrics do play a more important part, also play an important part. However, what you can do is set up your strength training workouts to sort of complement each other. For example, if you're going to do a heavy squat situation, you're going to be able to do heavy squats supersetted with box jumps, for example, which in that way you're getting your heavy strength training and also getting, plyometrics. Obviously, you're going to be doing plyometrics every time you come to the track, every time you do your tempo sessions, every time you do any run sessions, you're going to be doing plyometrics for runners. If you don't know what that is, type in your A skips, B skips, C skips, type in simple into YouTube, simple plyometric exercises for runners and do them. However, I will say strength training, super important. As I mentioned to the previous one, you're going to make sure you're doing one to two sort of sessions a week as an ideal. If you're feeling a slight niggle, but you have a half marathon coming up, should you take it easy or should you go full send? Now, the sensible answer to this is obviously take it easy. Try and weigh up if this is your A race, your B race, your C race, or you don't actually care at all. If this is a race that you're just going to sort of go with your mates and have a good time, is it really a good idea to go full send? Despite what mockery might have went on in the cafe this morning, obviously the correct answer is just to take it easy. However, if this was your A race, would you risk it all? That's the big question. Obviously, it depends how bad the niggle is. Obviously, you can speak to a sports professional without me giving you probably bad medical advice. If it's a small niggle and it's something that you've dealt with before, then it might be something you're able to handle the race with. However, if it's something that's really causing you trouble for weeks, go get yourself checked. Especially if you've got that good insurance, then you might as well go and get it checked out. That's basically what I would say. I'm probably going to do a few more questions. I'm starting to get bored of my own voice because I've been talking for about 30 minutes straight. Should I include speed work for a half marathon? Now, for the 12-week programs, there is a little bit of speed work in all the programs. However, obviously not as much in the complete beginner programs. In the intermediate one, there's a bit more, and the elite one, there is more than that. Now, with speed work, you do get great adaptations and you're able to sort of increase your running specific fitness a lot faster. However, I would look at what your capacity is when it comes to your own training. If you're running 10 to 15K a week, it might be a bit less important. It might be more important for you to increase your weekly mileage rather than having increases in, interval sessions. Everyone loves a hit and everyone loves an interval session. However, people don't like doing the hard work, which is long, hard runs or tempo runs and stuff. I'd say that they're more important and overall general weekly mileage. Gels or drink mix for longer runs and race days. So I would say, what have you trained with? What are you comfortable with? Fast acting carbs like gels are normally preferred on race day. However, if you're going to do drink mix, it's absolutely fine. However, one of the main issues with drink mix is what you're going to carry it with. Now, all of you who are going to be doing the half marathons, especially in Dubai, if you're watching this, you're going to take out a variable from the half marathon. So the variable in the half marathon is your ability to drink and take on fueling. Now, it's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen at the Burge to Burge last year. What people did was they went and expected water places to be along the route. I wouldn't do that. I would take your own running belt. I use a naked belt, #ad, but you can use any one that you want. But take a running belt, take a bottle, put your carb mix in it, or you can put your gels in it or take your own carbs with you. And that means you don't need to rely on what's provided you on the race. Obviously, I would normally say for a running race, gels are most important. And they're also easy. They're built for convenience and just get them smashed in. Drink mix is obviously cheaper. The person that asked this question, if you're a tight arse, then you obviously don't need to spend your money on on gels. Sorry, you can just have your cheap drink mix. Make your own drink mix. Just put some sugar in a bottle and drink it. That's what a lot of people do. So you can do that. This is an important question. What do you do if you miss a few sessions? The number one mistake that I see when it comes to this is people trying to catch up on sessions. For example, if you missed a tempo session that was supposed to be on a Monday, the worst thing you can do is just immediately go and try to catch up with that session, say on a Tuesday, meaning that, you know, your Wednesday session might be compromised, and then your Thursday one will be compromised, and you just spend playing catch up. Missing sessions happens not just for amateurs, but also for professionals. So, you know, if you miss a session, you miss a session. Reflect why you missed a session. If you couldn't be asked, that's on you. If you missed it because of work, health, family, that's something that happens, and just accept it, move on. Don't think too much about it. Try and stick to around 80-90% of what the plan is. That would be most important. If you're missing more than 50% of your runs for reasons that are out with your control, other like, you know, something like ill health, family issues, then you obviously need to check your commitment and find out how committed you are to actually getting better. And if it's something you want to do, stop making simple excuses for yourself. You know, just get out and get the work done. For the most part, obviously give yourself some grace if there's an actual purpose and a reason that you've missed the session. So yeah, I'm going to answer one more question, and then we're going to be done. So how do you deal with bad training days? Understand that bad training days happen, and they're probably going to happen. If your training plan is right, you're probably going to have a bad training day around a third of the time, and that's totally acceptable. The rule of thirds when it comes to running, you're going to have one good, one medium, one shit. So if it's bad, you're just going to deal with that and sort of move on. That's absolutely part of the game and just how it works. So how do you deal with it? Write down some reflections about why the session was bad. Write down, you know, physically on a piece of paper or on your computer, or you make notes in your diary. You can add notes into your diary so you can look back. Is there a reason why it was a bad session? Use it as a learning. So if you're maybe if you're sort of dealing with an injury, you might have a bad session. If you're under fueled, you might have a bad session. If you have bad sleep, you might have a bad session. Are these all within your control to be able to change? Injury, you can't be helped. Injury can't be helped. Fueling, you can do something about it the next time. And then also, if you know, say you had a bad sleep, is that within your control? If it's something to do with work, you're working late, you know, obviously that's nothing you can help. But if you just stayed up and you're out all night on the beers, then obviously that's something you can do about it. Craig said, Google Paul Hine jail. I'm not sure what that means, but I'm quite interested to know. Thanks for that. Hopefully, if you've watched this, then you got some sort of help out of it. 39 minutes of pretty much a lot of rambling, but hopefully if you've enjoyed it, then I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much.